All right, reflexes and reactions. This is our online version of the lab, and we're going to include the lab demonstrators' demonstrations of all the various tests of the nervous system. So we're going to call this the reflexes and reactions lab. So you should take notes as we go along, because this is something that you'll be writing up as a report, a scientific report. What's the date today? March 3, 2021. Yeah, reflexes, involuntary. Reactions are voluntary. So a reaction is a voluntary response to an external stimulus of some sort. With an appropriate motor response. To the stimulus, and we'll be testing a few different ones in the demonstrations. So the time interval of your reaction, like for the baseball player, it's got to be 0.2 of a second. So the time interval between application of the stimulus and the response, the motor response, is the reaction time. And we express the reaction time in milliseconds. So in the lab, we have these rulers, and they've got divisions that aren't centimeters, they're milliseconds. And well, you'll see what it looks like. You drop the ruler, you catch it. You can tell how many milliseconds it was for you to catch it. So what does that reflect? With respect to our nervous system, what does that tell you about the nervous system? It reflects a couple of different things. It reflects the speed of flow on neurophysiological, cognitive. Your cerebral cortex is involved in voluntary reactions, and information processing that is created by the action of a stimulus of some sort on the subject, whoever's being the person catching the ruler, the one that's doing the reacting, sensory system. So what the lab is about is a very simple reaction time. So it's known as a simple reaction. one stimulus and one reaction. So for each test, it's one stimulus and one reaction. There's other kinds of reaction tests, though, that you'll be interested in when you're going into the health sciences. There are choice reactions. Choice reaction time. Which can include your visual reaction. And that can affect drivers when you're driving. You have a choice of red, yellow, or green, and you have to react. That's a choice reaction time. It affects pilots, of course. It affects search and rescue. There's another kind of reaction time. It's called a recognition reaction time. We're not doing these ones. These are just interesting. In which case you're given two stimuli, one that you should react to and one that you should not. Yeah. And that's known as a distractor, the one that you should not react to. You know, and that's important. You've probably seen this on TV. I've never seen it live before, but you know, they have those tests for policemen where, you know, they're running through some kind of warehouse or something, and, you know, they're given a perpetrator and an innocent bystander. So two stimuli, but one which you definitely should not react to. Yeah. So reaction time, regardless of which kind of test it is a good indicator of your sensory motor coordination. And physical performance. So yeah, athletes have to have good reaction times. And it's a learned thing. You know, you practice, you do it over and over again, and your reaction gets to be faster. It can also determine the alertness of a person. And of course, that's really important for a lot of different professions. For example, for security guards, for example, that may be on duty for quite a long time. For nurses, for dental hygienists, dentists, doctors, I'm trying to think of all the health sciences you might be going into, etc. So yeah, very important, alertness. So there are various components that affect reaction time. Does reaction time get slower with age, for example? It could. It depends on the individual and their experience. Gender, also it depends on experience. Physical fitness. What else can affect your reaction time?
Cognition.
Sorry?
Cognition.
Cognition? Yeah. What about alcohol? Does alcohol affect it? Or whether you're active? Yeah, alcohol. Activity. So level of physical fitness, yeah, being active. Good. Yeah. Your general health. So when you're testing the general population, which is what we've done in the lab, you come up with an average reaction time for a particular type of stimulus. So you come up with an average, but there will be a lot of variation in your subjects. And this is the reason for that variation. And that's the kind of thing that you'll want to talk about in your paper, the kind of variation that there is in the data. And I'll give you a data set. Another thing that can affect it is the type of stimulus. So what we've tested is 3 different kinds of stimuli. Visual. So, you've got somebody's going to drop this and you're watching it drop. You're watching it drop so you can catch it. That's visual. Auditory, which is where your eyes are closed and somebody says, go, and then you catch it. So that's an auditory cue. And the other one is tactile. So somebody, and I'll show you this in a good demonstration, but somebody will touch, you'll have your eyes closed, and nobody will say anything, but they'll drop it. And as they drop it, touch you on the shoulder, and then you have to catch it. Yeah, so that's all about reactions. And that's what you'll write about in your paper, reactions. And you'll also write about one other thing, which is a particular reflex, and it's called the patellar reflex. So reflex is involuntary. And there are different reflexes that test different conditions of the nervous system. The patellar reflex is one. And we'll try that out. You can try that out at home. It's called a monosynaptic arc. And this you'll need to look up in the last part of the spinal cord chapter. That will be a very good source for you for this project. For background information on reflexes. Okay, so that will be one of your sources. So, and you'll see that you have receptors in your muscles. So muscle, they're called spindles, muscle spindles. In your quadriceps, that's this big muscle in your leg, in the front of your leg. Quadriceps. are stretched. When the hammer hits the patellar, sorry about the writing, it's terrible. Oh dear. Hits the, I'm trying to write fast, that's why. But I shall put up a copy of this online as well. The patellar tendon. So the patellar tendon is very large. That's the one in front of your knee. And there's a sensory impulse to the dorsal horn of the spinal cord, the dorsal horn, the dorsal root. Ganglion, sorry, that's where it goes in the first place. To posterior gray horn. And that is where it synapses. So it goes through the interneurons there. Which integrate the stimulus with a response, which will involve, of course, a motor neuron or neurons. And that's why you have a reflex. It's to prevent overstretching. Yeah. And so I've gone into quite a bit of detail with those ones because that's what you will be writing up. The other ones, however, of course, they will be in a future lab quiz, but these reflexes, so the above, will be in your report. The other ones that we'll do, and I'll just show you what they are with video, is the Achilles reflex. What else? The plantar reflex, also known as Babinski. The pupillary reflex. And nystagmus. And I think the last one is the ciliospinal reflex. Yeah, so those are some other ones that you will do. So the Achilles reflex, you're testing your, or you're tapping your Achilles tendon, and you'll see how that works. What are you testing? You're testing your gastrocnemius, your soleus muscles. So when you tap the Achilles tendon, dorsiflexion is normal. So if your foot does not dorsiflex, then there could be an issue. What are some of the other ones? Let's see. The plantar reflex, that is under your foot. Under your foot. And it's used in infants. They have a certain reaction. If you have that reaction, however, as an adult, there might be an issue with your nervous system. The pupillary reflex. So that's a test where a light is shone into one eye to see the constriction of the pupil, and maybe the other pupil will constrict as well. And nystagmus is a condition where your eyes flutter. And it can be due to a stroke. It could be congenital. There's different reasons for nystagmus. And the ciliospinal reflex, which you'll do, is a dilation of the pupil in response to pain. So, well, you won't do this. We'll demonstrate how it works. But you pinch the ciliospinal, and usually your pupils dilate, because in pain, your pupils dilate in order for you to see better. Presumably, you need to run away from a dangerous situation. All right, I'm going to stop there.